episode of Journey, where we listen to wonderful stories of our fellow kababayans here in Canada. And for today's episode, we have Archierose Natividad, an executive producer and host of Filipino Fridays Podcast. Hi, Archie.
Hi, Kat. Nice to see you.
We always ask the same question. What is your Filipino story?
Ever since I was young, I can remember being passionate about my culture. So just to share a little bit about my upbringing, I was born in Montreal and in an area that is heavily Filipino populated. We moved shortly after to Vancouver, and then I actually ended up moving to the Philippines and growing up there for 4.5, 5 years. So I went to school in Victoria City, located outside of Bacolod in Negros Occidental. And my upbringing there, I participated in a lot of cultural events at school. Like I did the Linggo ng Wika. You know, I sang a song. I would compete in singing competitions, and the song was Isang Lahi. Like, you know, ever since I can remember, just my foundational years was really entrenched in being close to my culture. And my lola played a really great role in that. And when it came to moving back to Canada, you know, at first I felt the culture shock. You know, I was like, all I've known is what it's like to grow up in the Philippines. For the first 2 years, you know, it was hard to adjust. Like, it's a visceral memory, like not being able to speak the language and being bullied even because I couldn't feel comfortable or confident speaking English. And then, you know, fast forward, I start to settle and adjust.
Archierose's cultural connection has definitely inspired her to create Filipino Fridays Podcast, aiming to provide perspective and more understanding about the Filipino culture.
Filipino Fridays Podcast aims to bridge the gap between the Filipino cultural identity and the young Filipino youth in the diaspora. So for many other second generations, third generations, even first and a half generations, some of them have felt disconnected from their Filipino heritage, living in a different place, living outside of the Philippines. When we were reflecting on the social issues that were relevant during the pandemic, and by dissecting kind of our cultural issues, our social issues in our community, we wanted to ask poignant questions and really reflect on our Filipino cultural identity. So that is how Filipino Fridays came about. So it started with conversations like that, and then we started interviewing people in our community.
With Filipino Fridays Podcast, Archierose is able to understand more about the gap amongst Filipinos.
And so there is this intense battle of who am I as a Filipino? And then there becomes a barrier between somebody who was, let's say, born and raised in the diaspora to somebody who is Filipino and just immigrated. What's the difference? Are we all Filipino? And part of that is the insecurity about language. For somebody who was born here, they may not know how to speak the language. Whereas somebody who had just immigrated, they might feel insecure, unsure about how strong their English is. So we talk about things like that, and we encourage the younger generation, like talk to your parents, like, what was it like growing up in the Philippines? Teach me how to speak Tagalog or Kapampangan or Cebuano, right? What are your favorite memories growing up? Because by taking that initiative to connect with our relatives, our family, our friends who, you know, did grow up in the Philippines, we're able to learn more about what it's like to be Filipino, which a lot of people are searching for. Like, we encourage people, take the first step, get to know each other, learn about each other, hear about each other's stories, because that way you're able to appreciate each other's different experiences and perspectives. And then you can really build the foundation to to cross that gap and fill it up with connection and dialogue.
Archierose's love for and the desire to preserve the Filipino culture has also brought pride to other Filipinos here.
Filipinos are one of the most hardworking people. We give so much care, whether it's in healthcare or whether it's in different sectors. We're always, compared to our other Asian counterparts, we are not the first thought. We become the afterthought. And we try to change that narrative and really empower those to say, hey, I matter, I have a voice. As a Filipino, I'm so proud of my people being one of the most dedicated, resilient, hardworking people on the face of the earth. And we deserve to have a platform. We deserve to have our voices heard. We deserve to have our hard work appreciated. And that's what we really want to empower. What we really want to empower the younger youth, even other Filipino people in the community. That way they could really embrace who they are as Filipinos and what they've contributed to society.
Asked about her learnings and discoveries amongst her guests through Filipino Fridays.
What is the common thing that I've discovered among our interviews with the different guests is how passionate and how much full of love Filipinos are. And we are a type of collective people who feel deeply. We embody kapwa. We care so deeply about not only our families, about each other, about other people, other communities. And so that is something so unique to us. Kapwa, there isn't even like a really great English translation. And it is an indigenous Filipino psychology. And it's something just that is so powerful, that core value that is ingrained in all of us.
How's the future of Filipino Fridays looking?
Filipino Fridays is continuing to expand, to grow. So we are going to continue to have conversations that bridge the gap in cultural identity. But I hope to see a future where we can establish perhaps a company that continues to advocate for Filipino platforms, whether that's creating mentorship circles where we can foster culture and connection. So for example, if someone was an immigrant who just moved here to somebody who is a second generation, finding a way for them to connect, create programs like that would be amazing. I'm hoping to continue to produce more stories because again, Filipino culture, so many rich stories that have yet been untapped. That is the dream, right? To see more of our representation.
Join us next time here on Journey, Stories of Filipinos in Canada.